aren't you there? Lovely. So I just wanted to reiterate and say good morning to everybody. We're about to get started with our workshop session today, where you're going to get some initial grounding in using WordPress, obviously for building websites. We're really pleased that we've got Claire, who's on the training session today. She's part of a series of creative and digital learning sessions that we're running as these bolt-on courses for people who are perhaps on one of our Time to Grow programs, on our Careers in Holistic Health program, on the Ellie programs. We've got people who've been coming to other stuff at this, and we've also, because we put these bolt-on courses out to the wider world, we've got lots of other people who might not be connected to those programs at all. So we've got a mixture of people, mixture of knowledge and brains. And I have said to people, if you want to put your contacts in the chat, or you want to put a link to a website or some social media stuff, very welcome to do that. Flourish Together is an organisation that supports people developing social and ethical ventures, and we reinvest our surpluses in supporting women as a force for social change. And this session, whilst it might touch on some of those themes, is really all about helping you, use WordPress to build your website. I'm really pleased to hand over to Claire, who's from the Village Web Company, a social enterprise that we helped get set up and evolved along with some other partners over in Stockport, where they're based. And there is an offer after today, as I've mentioned, that if people need a bit more time on this, or they want to get in a room and get some practical support from Claire, we could create a follow-up session before the summer that visits Claire's venture that she's got in Romilly there, accessible by the train and bus, and there's parking, so we could create a follow-up session. But first things first, let's get this session done and see how you go. And yeah, feel free. I'm sure Claire's going to explain the format of the session and get to know you all a little bit better over the next couple of hours.
Okay, so good morning everyone. As Nicola said, I'm Claire Worthington. So my business is the Village Web Company CIC, and we essentially build websites, deliver training, but the profits from building the websites and delivering the training goes back into delivering digital skills workshops. So as much as I love the internet, and as much as I love computers and the fact that I'm online from, well, if I'm awake, I'm probably online. All of that is amazing and I love it. When something suddenly goes online and it's like, oh, you just download the app, you just go on the website, just for me in these instances can often be a 4-letter word, because doing things online sometimes needs a little bit more than we think. So I got in the habit of ranting on Twitter about digital exclusion, and then I discovered there was a way that I could actually do something more than just mouth off on Twitter, which was actually to start delivering digital skills workshops to people that they don't have to pay to attend. But if you're not going to charge 8-year-olds to learn how to use their iPads, then you need to find another way of doing it. So the websites and the training is the commercial side of the business, but essentially anybody who needs help to learn how to get onto the internet or how to use a computer or a smartphone or a tablet, that's kind of what I do. So hopefully the tech is going to stop acting the fool. Worst case scenario, I've got the whole thing down on, and I can share the screen from preview. I tend to use PowerPoint when I'm doing stuff online. I decided to do something a little bit different and do it straight from Keynote. Keynote and Zoom today are really not best friends, so I'm hoping that they're not going to stitch me up too much. So, using WordPress to build a website. So, first things, for those of you who haven't met me before, one thing that you should probably know about me is I do talk quite a lot. So today there are a lot of slides, partly to keep me on topic because I do love a tangent, but also it means that you've got all of this to refer back to. So although when you look at today's agenda, it's a lot of stuff to cram into for 2.5 hours, I will try and give you a break in the middle. But mostly I want you to be in a position where by the end of today, you understand what WordPress is and how you could use it to make your own website. Now, WordPress for me is an amazing piece of software, amazing in lots of different ways. Firstly, from a commercial point of view, it's free. It's free to use. You don't have to spend a large amount of money to get WordPress. It also has a really good community around it where they will help and support people to use WordPress. And also it's really easy to use. So WordPress for me, I'm a massive fan of it, because when I build a website and I write it in code, if I hand that over to somebody else, to hand it over to one of my clients, well, even if they want to change just one sentence, somebody somewhere has got to download a file, they've got to edit that code, they've got to upload that file back, all of those things that maybe they don't know how to do. WordPress is brilliant because I can do all the slick stuff, I can create whatever I need, and I can hand that over to them and they can actually manage their own content. So if your business isn't building websites, WordPress is a brilliant option, because unlike a lot of sort of tech solutions, it was built by developers, but it wasn't built for developers, which means that a lot of it is in plain English. And the overall concept of it is that it's designed for people to be able to use. It's about being able to publish things on the internet rather than some of the other stuff that us tech folk occasionally get overly involved in. So today I'm going to cover something called the website triangle, which is my way of explaining what you need for your website. And I find that quite often when people struggle with things or when things go awry, it's because they don't understand all of the basics of what a website is and what it needs. We're going to talk about WordPress.com and self-hosted WordPress, because although it's kind of the same thing, it's also very, very different. We're going to talk about WordPress out of the box. We're going to talk about plugins and themes that you might have already heard of if you're a little bit familiar with WordPress. And then we're going to talk about the difference between your actual website that people see and your dashboard, which is the place where you as a website owner can go in, make your changes, edit your content, write new information. All of that happens in your dashboard where nobody except you and other people who can log into your website can see it. I'm going to talk a little bit about user levels, a tiny bit. Pages and posts, which is one of the most confusing things for most people when it comes to WordPress. So I'm going to explain to you about what the difference is of those. We're going to talk about different post categories. I'm going to show you the media library, and then we're going to talk about publishing on WordPress. So for somebody who generally talks a bit too much, that's a pretty long list for 2.5 hours. So I'm going to try and stay on it as much as I can.
We're certainly getting the money's worth anyway, Claire. So especially given this is a free or funded.
You put more in. I've left some things out just so you've got a reason to come back. Now I can't see the chat properly at the moment while I'm going through, but I will try and stop periodically and have a bit of a glance.
You're all right for now. We've just got people who popped a few bits of info, but no key questions as yet.
Okay, so if everyone's ready, let's get started. If you're, as it's being recorded, occasionally screens do pop up. So if you want to make sure that you're not viewed on screen, then if you sort of switch your camera off, then you won't be picked up. If you want to change your name, if you press the 3 dots near your name on there, you can change that if that's something that you're concerned about. But other than that, I'm just going to crack on and we'll just. I've
got you on presenter view, so it's just showing you in the main.
Brilliant. Okay, so websites. Now this is what I call the website triangle, because for an actual website to be live on the internet so that other people can visit it, you need to have 3 things. Now, I'm just going to hold my hands up and say this is a blatant rip-off of something called the fire triangle that I learned on a health and safety course. But, I like to add my own flavour to things. So the first part of our website triangle is your web domain. That's the address of your website. It's what people type in if they want to go and see your website. So it might be, so my website, my business website is villagewebcompany.co.uk. That is my web domain. That's what I bought and paid for. And every year I sort of renew that, which means I can carry on sort of using that name. People can type villagewebcompany.co.uk on in any web browser. So it can be on Safari, it can be on Chrome, wherever you go and look at websites. If you type villagewebcompany.co.uk, that website is going to come up because I own that web domain and it's mine, and that's where my website lives. That's how you find it. So web domains will have different endings to them. So I've given 3 examples on here. So I've got the villagewebcompany.co.uk. I also own worthybobs.com because my very first business, I did children's retail. My surname's Worthington. You can get away with a bit of a silly name if you do children's clothing retail. But worthybobs.com and worthybobs.co.uk, which I also own, are 2 separate web domains. So just having that first bit, it's the whole thing that counts as your domain. So worthybobs.com, worthybobs.co.uk, worthybobs.org, they are 3 completely separate websites. And also when you buy a website, or when you buy a web domain, sorry, get my own terminology right. When you buy a web domain, you choose the ending. So the other one I've put on the list, I've put Flourish together, but I've spelt together wrong, which is quite embarrassing. But flourishtogether.org.uk. So it tells people that they're an organisation. But usually when somebody chooses to use .org or .org.uk, it's normally because maybe you're a charity or you're a social enterprise or something of that nature. If you're a commercial business, you would normally want to be a .co.uk or possibly a .com. There's lots and lots of different ones, and there are new web domain endings coming out all of the time. The standard ones that most people are familiar with end with .co.uk if you're in the UK, or .com. They're the two big ones that you're most likely to want to use. So I own claireworthington.co.uk. The claireworthington.com is owned by someone completely different, another Claire Worthington who makes embroidered bedding sets. So you have to own the whole thing. If you buy your sort of business name, if somebody else has got the other half of your name or one of the other domains, people might go to them instead. So it's really important that we choose carefully. And when you register a web domain, you can do that through a lot of different companies, but essentially it's somebody somewhere who knows the person who's behind that web domain. So if we think about the darker side of the internet, if you're on the internet and you're up to no good, we need to have enough information that the police can find you. So when you register a web domain, it will ask for information about you as an individual, but essentially you sort of pay up front for the cost of your web domain, you choose one that fits, you give them your details, and then make sure that you don't ignore the emails that come from the people that you've bought your web domain from. Every now and again, I'll have a client who looks after their own web domain, they'll tell me the website is broken, and then when we go and have a look, it turns out that they haven't renewed their web domain. So they've had an email from 123reg or GoDaddy or whoever they registered it with, or they've had several emails. They weren't sure what to do with them, so they ignored them, and then the website falls off the internet, because having your actual address of your website is the first part of the website triangle. Now, the second part is the code. So this is the various files. So it might be files as in written in code. It might be images that make up your website. The various files that are needed to make up your website, they're the second part of the website triangle. Because if we've got our web domain, but there's no files, we don't have a website. Oh, that was not the plan. We've skipped one.
We have got a quick question here. I think you answered it, Claire. Well, but I think there's a question from Jill. Where's best to buy domains? I think you mentioned 123reg and you mentioned GoDaddy. I know Flourish set up theirs with 123reg many moons ago, and I think they can help you set up a website, or you can just host it there and then ask somebody else to set up your website, so you've got that flexibility. But
there's lots of different things. My personal view is that most of the companies who sell web domains also offer web hosting. If you spend £15 on a web domain, or if you're using somebody like GoDaddy, where your first year only costs you 99 pence, they don't really make any money out of that. They make the money off the web hosting. So it's very straightforward. You can go to any of these companies, you can register your web domain, you can set up web hosting. They will get you up and running really easily. The problem kicks in if you try and leave. So companies like Wix and GoDaddy can make it more difficult than I personally think it should be if you decide that you want to move to a different company for your hosting, or if you want to do something slightly different. Essentially, there are literally thousands and thousands of different organizations, but wherever you can get web hosting, you can definitely buy a web domain. I sometimes like to keep them separate because it means if you've got any problems, you can literally just lift it and take it to wherever. But I can definitely share a few companies that I've used in the past that I haven't had any problems with. I started with 123reg, haven't really had any problems with them. I don't use them for hosting, I just use them to do web domains with. So 123reg are quite straightforward, and also it means that because they're not designed for techies, it makes them quite user friendly. So that's one good thing for them. But essentially, when you think about the big companies with the big marketing budgets, they're the ones we tend to go to. So you can get them in different places, and essentially, as long as you've paid for it and you keep it up to date, the domain is very straightforward. The problem kicks in when you've got a group of services with them, and then you want to maybe move your website somewhere else and take the domain with you. That's when some of the bigger companies don't have the best reputation. It's probably the nicest way of putting it. But yeah, you can get them from loads of places, and I'll share a few later. I'll make a note.
Great stuff.
Okay, so the third part of our web hosting triangle, our first part of our website triangle, is web hosting. So we've bought our web domain, we've got an address for our website. Somebody somewhere has created the files and all the pictures, and they've made everything that creates your website. But making a website and having it live on the internet involves having all of those files hosted on what we call a web server. And a web server is somewhere that is able to take your website, and then when people type that address, it shares your website on the internet. So essentially, in layman's terms, it's somebody else's computer, but it's making sure that those files are in somebody else's computer that is able to share them with the rest of the internet every time somebody types that address. As far as the computers are concerned, my website doesn't live at villagewebcompany.co.uk. As far as computers are concerned, there will be something called an IP address, and it's a little bit like a telephone exchange. So if you've ever moved house, you find that you can take your number with you, but they just kind of make some changes behind the scenes that don't affect us in day-to-day life, and web hosting is very similar. So the idea of having your web address, it's a bit like having a personalized license plate. You can get a new car as long as you tell DVLA that actually this license plate now belongs to this car. It's about making sure that those three things are connected. So that's the third part of our triangle. You can't have a website live on the internet unless you've got a web domain, unless there's an actual website to be displayed, and unless those files are sitting on something called a server that will then share it with the internet. So those are the three things. If you don't have those three things, people cannot visit your website. It's not open to discussion. It can't be done. You can build a website and you can have it on your computer and you can be the only one who sees it. But if you want people to be able to type an address and get to your website, you need those three things. And that's quite an important thing when it comes to sort of getting started with websites. A lot of people are they're off, they're spending money, and then later on it's like, oh, I didn't know I needed that. So it's easier to know that up front. So what is WordPress? So WordPress is a piece of software that was essentially, it was built for bloggers. So it was designed for people who wanted to be able to write blog posts and share information about whatever their current interest or infatuation or their hobby was, or whatever it was they wanted to share with people. WordPress is designed for that. It comes from that history. So developers made it, and the two developers who made it were Matt Mullenweg and also Mike Little. And Mike Little lives in Stockport. So a good Greater Manchester lad, lovely bloke. Met him loads of times, amazing. Now, for me, one of the main wonderful things about WordPress is that despite being sort of really, really skilled developers who came up with this amazing idea that had a lot of commercial appeal, they decided to make it something called open source. Now, open source means that essentially that the code that makes up the software that you've just built is shared with people for free. So you can use WordPress absolutely 100% free of charge. There are certain elements to having your website that might start to cost you. So if you need to buy a web domain, if you need to pay for hosting, or if you need to pay a web developer or somebody like me to make changes and to build your website, there will be a cost to those services. But WordPress itself doesn't cost anything, because people like Mike Little and Matt Mullenweg made that decision that they were going to make this available to everyone. And there are people all over the world who are using WordPress for their websites, but also people who are creating a living from developing things for WordPress. So extra things, which we're going to talk about in a little while, but also you've got all of this whole community that comes with it. So I am a massive, massive fan of WordPress. It's not the only type of software. You can build websites in loads of different ways, but I've definitely got a soft spot for WordPress. The last time they checked, over 40% of every website on the internet was built with WordPress. I mean, that also includes random blogs by people like me who started a blog and then sort of abandoned it. So they're not all up and running and lively and doing things, but 40% of the web is pretty big. But that's because it genuinely is that good. Now, you will hear the odd horror story here and there about how, oh, WordPress this and oh, WordPress always gets hacked and WordPress is really complicated. It doesn't have to be. If you do what you need to do to keep your website safe, and if you sort of make sure that you deal with reputable people when it comes to buying any of the add-ons that we're going to talk about, WordPress is one of the most amazing things ever. So 40% of the websites on the internet built with WordPress, although I do feel that a fair few of them are mine, and a lot of them have been quite neglected over the years. So WordPress there's two different types of WordPress. We have self-hosted WordPress and we have WordPress.com. Now, WordPress.com, you can go to the WordPress.com website and you can sign up and get yourself a website 100% free of charge and be up and running in a matter of minutes. So WordPress.com, so going back to our website triangle, it covers off your web domain because out of the box, you will kind of give yourself a name and then it will have WordPress.com on the end. So it might be, for example, I might have Worthy, I can't remember which ones I've got, but I'm pretty sure I probably claimed Worthy Bobs back in the day. So the web domain for that would be worthybobs.wordpress.com. But it didn't cost me anything. It's 100% free. I don't have to pay for hosting on a monthly basis or an annual basis because it includes the hosting. Whereas with self-hosted WordPress, you will need to choose a web domain. You will need to pay for hosting or get hosting free of charge in some other way. But self-hosted gives you a lot more freedom because with the WordPress.com, you get sort of like a selection of different plugins and different themes that you can use. You can only use the ones that are available to you on WordPress.com. With self-hosted WordPress, you can do whatever you like. If you want to go off and write your own themes, or you want to change your hosting, or you want to do something very, very custom, you can do that with self-hosted WordPress. So self-hosted means you've got to sort out your own hosting and your own web domain. WordPress.com, they will take care of all of that for you. But if you want to use WordPress.com, but you want to use your own web domain, so if I wanted to be worthybobs.com instead of worthybobs.wordpress.com, well, I can buy a web domain straight through WordPress, or I can use a web domain that I've already bought from somewhere else. But essentially, between the two options, you can use WordPress to do pretty much anything. But if you just want to go and have a little play about, or you just want to see what it's like, maybe you just want to do a little blog, then WordPress.com is amazing for that. It will cost you absolutely nothing. You can be up and running quite soon, and you can literally have something on the internet in a matter of minutes. Now, most of today, I'm going to be talking about self-hosted WordPress, because as small businesses, that's probably what's going to be more useful for most of you. So hopefully if I get through in enough time, I'll be able to show you, sort of like demonstrate both versions. But most of the slides today are really about sort of WordPress, where you do need to arrange some kind of hosting. Michaela and I were having a chat earlier. If that's something you're interested in doing, we can probably sort something out for you to at least have a trial, and I'll sort of help with that. So out of the box WordPress, because the thing with, if you build a website from scratch, writing the code yourself using HTML and CSS and JavaScript, you have to go off and write that code. If you get yourself a WordPress website, you start with a fully functioning website. So you don't have to start with a blank piece of paper. It's like the difference between kind of buying a car that might not be everything you want and changing it, making some modifications or getting a mechanic involved to customize it, versus getting all the parts and then having to put it together yourself, including the engine. So out of the box, WordPress will provide you with a website. So I like to say to my clients, it's a little bit like a basic Ford Fiesta. So you can go to a Ford dealership, you can buy a Fiesta, it's a good little car. You can get in it, you can drive home, you can tootle about, you can do whatever you need. Out of the box, WordPress is a fully functioning, very, very decent, high quality website. It might not be exactly what you want, and it might not be exactly what your business or your organization needs, but it will provide you with a website that you can work with, and you don't have to write any code to do so. Now, the way that WordPress works is that you can control pretty much every aspect of it. So if you want to change how your website looks, or you want to have a layout in a certain way without having to sort of do too much extra work and change too many extra things, then we do that through the use of WordPress themes. So if we use our car analogy, a WordPress theme would be giving our car a paint job, or it might be just changing the interior, putting some seat covers in there. But essentially, it's still a Ford Fiesta. It's just that instead of it being the red Ford Fiesta that we left with, it's now a blue Ford Fiesta, and maybe it's got some extra trim. Maybe you've got your fluffy dice on up there. Maybe you put some stickers in the window, or you've had the windows tinted. Themes are really about how your website looks. So it might make some changes to the layout, but essentially, when you think about themes and plugins, which is the other thing I'm about to speak to you about, themes are about how it looks. If you want to add extra functionality to your website, then we would do that using WordPress plugins. So you can add extra features, and essentially WordPress plugins are extra bits of code that can be added to an existing WordPress website that will either add extra features, make it easier for you to manage. Sometimes you can actually use them to help with the design of your website. But you can use them for everything, including things like backing up your website. So if you've done a lot of work, you've made a lot of changes, and you want to make sure that you've got the latest version all stored up, there's actually a plugin for that. There's loads of plugins. If you've got a WordPress website and you want to be able to sell products, you can add a plugin. So there's one called Woocommerce that I use on a regular basis. And Woocommerce was designed to work with WordPress so that you can have your own online shop. And that literally is it's very, very straightforward to add. You don't have to, nothing that you do with WordPress necessarily involves having to write any code. You might not get, if you want it exactly a certain way, then yeah, you're going to need a developer sooner or later. But if you just want a website and you want to keep your costs down, you can use WordPress and you can add free plugins to be able to give you extra functionality. So we've got 3 Ford Fiestas here. So this one here, the rally driver. So they'll have used it. If this was a WordPress site, it started off as a basic Ford Fiesta, but somebody somewhere has changed the theme. So it's not the plain red one anymore. They've now jazzed it up. They've made it look a bit different. They've added some spoilers. They've added a fin on the back. That's the theme. It changes the look. They probably changed the interior a little bit as well to make it safer in case our rally driver comes off the road. But instead of just changing how it looks, they've also done quite a bit more. They'll have changed the engine, they'll have done some other stuff. So in WordPress terms, they've added some extra functionality, and they'll have done that using plugins. So no matter what you want, a Ford Fiesta is still a car. But actually, if you're planning on winning sort of rally races, you're going to need to do some work. And WordPress is the same. If you just want a nice little car to tootle about in, or you just want a nice little website that can get you started, you can do that straight out of the box with WordPress. If you've got a very specific need, or you want to do something in particular with it, then you're probably going to want to change the theme, and you're probably going to want to add some plugins to give you some extra functionality to do things that out of the box WordPress doesn't automatically do. So I find that the car analogy is usually the most straightforward way of explaining it. So we have WordPress themes for how it looks, WordPress plugins for what it does. If you want to add extra functionality or change the look, that's how we do it. So this is about websites. So this is what our current demo website looks like. So I sort of built this yesterday. It's using the latest WordPress theme that comes free with the software. So WordPress was built by a team of designers and developers, and there's a whole organization behind it. So there's a company called Automatic, and Automatic are a massive sort of software company. And they look after all of the code and all of the stuff that makes WordPress work. As well as building what they call the core parts of WordPress, they also include a theme. So on an annual basis, roughly, WordPress will have an update where they will add any new features that they want to add, and they might change how it looks, they might change how it works. They tend to do that, and they'll do that on a regular basis. When people say about, oh, WordPress websites, they always get hacked, blah, 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 blah. They don't. WordPress websites that aren't running the most up-to-date software, that haven't updated their plugins, that are getting themes for free from random parts of the internet, those sites get hacked on a daily basis because you've made it too easy. In the same way that we wouldn't get out of our brand new Ford Fiesta, leave the keys in and not lock the door, it's exactly the same. If you've got anything on the internet, you need to keep it safe. As much as digital is great and there's an amazing community and there are lots of lovely, lovely people, there are also a lot of very, very dodgy people on the internet. So when it comes to things like WordPress or any other piece of software, you need to be aware. But unlike if you were building your website from scratch, if you suddenly become aware of a new sort of like security issue, you don't have to go off and write that code and figure out how to deal with this problem. You will get a little thing that will say, actually, you need to update either your software, or you need to update this plugin, or you need to update this theme. You literally just have to press the button when it tells you to. That is the best way of keeping your WordPress site sort of safe and secure. Using a strong password, using a sensible username, keeping everything updated, those three things will keep most scallies out of your website. Now, just like everything else, yes, there are people out there who could probably get in and out of just about anything, in the same way that the most determined world famous cat burglars could probably break into any safe. Most of the time, the people who are going to cause you problems on the internet, we're not talking about master criminals. We're not talking about top range, trained for years hackers. We're talking about people who are just trying their luck. If you leave your back door open, you're more likely to get robbed. There's no rocket science involved. So this is what our website looks like. This is where anybody who comes and visits this particular website, this is how it looks, and this is using the latest WordPress theme. So whenever WordPress do a big change, they also include a new theme. They're normally named after the year that it went live. So this particular theme is called like 2022. There's no complicated part to it. Now, in standard sort of web development terms, the very first thing that this website says to us is hello world. Anytime you learn any type of code for those of you who are interested in sort of web development. Whenever you try a new piece of software, it's just standard that we say hello world. That's the first thing they do, which is why WordPress has included it. This is exactly how this website came out of the box. I didn't make any changes. I didn't do any tweaks. I did literally nothing. I made this last night in under 15 minutes, probably less. The 15 minutes probably included me getting up, getting a drink, coming back. So you will have a website out of the box. It will include a sample page, a sample post, a sample comment, and there's usually at least one plugin added. So they give you everything you need to see-ish how WordPress works. But if you went off today and you set up your own WordPress site, this is exactly what it would look like. So our website rather, sorry, don't know where that came from. Our website is the thing that people can see. That is the public part of your website. That's the bit that if somebody types the address in, that's what they get. We also have the little bit that people don't see. So the little bit behind the curtain, the place where you make all of your changes, the bit that only you get to see or people that you have given access to. And that is our dashboard. So I'm going to show you the dashboard, and then we're just going to have a quick 2 minutes while I just check the chat and make sure everyone's okay. All right, but I'll show you the dashboard first. So we've seen our public website. This is the dashboard. This is the back of our website. This is the bit that the public don't get to see. So as a rule of thumb, this is a fairly bog standard WordPress sort of dashboard. I've deliberately not tweaked it, and I've got rid of any extra plugins that I might normally add by default. So this top bit here, we go to the top left. I'm not sure, I don't think you can actually see my mouse, but over in the top left-hand corner, we've got a little WordPress logo, and it's in grey, and it's just a W in a circle. If you click that, that will take you to various links about WordPress, about the software itself, not particularly about your website. Where we've got the little house, the house takes us to our home. So if you click that, it will give you the option to go and look at your website to see what it looks like. When you're logged into your website and you want to look at go back to the dashboard, that picture of the house will change, and it will change to like a little icon that it's designed to take you back to your dash. Everything down the left-hand side, where it says dashboard, posts, media, pages, comments, all of those things, that's a menu. But the thing with WordPress is it will let you do everything in more than one way as a rule of thumb. As a rule of thumb, it will generally let you do exactly the same thing in 2 or 3 different places. It's all about which sort of works best for you. Now you can see over in the big grey box where it says plugins, this shows us which plugins I've got added to the website at the moment. I also deleted a couple, but if you go into the dashboard, you can look at various parts of your website and you can control different bits. So on this page, I'm here, I'm in the dashboard, I'm looking at the plugins. I can see that I have a Kismet, which deals with anti-spam comments. Because as I said before, WordPress was actually made for bloggers. And the idea of blogging was that you would come up with something, you would write your content, you would add pictures, you would talk about whatever your thing was. So I quite like gardening. If I was doing a gardening blog, it would be, this is my garden, this is my new plant, this is what I've done, here's a picture of it. It comes from South America, it really likes a lot of sun, it likes a well-draining soil. Whatever it is I want to talk about in that post. And then the idea is that other gardeners would then comment and say, oh, I've got one of those, or I've got a hydrangea, or it would encourage people to have conversations, to interact, because that's what the internet is about. It's about people communicating and interacting. Unfortunately, when it comes to WordPress, although comments are a brilliant way of sort of facilitating conversation, what generally happens is if you don't keep an eye on your comments, your website will be inundated with spam. you will generally find that the spam is either sales of pharmaceutical products, pornography, a lot of Viagra sales on there. And not because your website is anything to do with any of these things, but because it's an easy way for people to try and get links that point back to their website. When we think about people being up to no good on the internet and people hacking, we tend to think of people sort of working really hard, writing a lot of code, all the stuff we see on the TV. In real life, they don't. They will just write a tiny little program, send it off around the internet, and it will just attach itself wherever it can. If it finds a website that will allow it to leave comments, and they can leave comments that include links to porn sites and pharmaceutical sites and fake review sites and all of that nonsense, and those links actually show up, then that's, for them, that's a win. It costs them next to nothing. It's really easy for them to do. And if you're not monitoring your sort of spam comments, you're going to end up having problems. Because at some point, Google will turn up and Google will have a look at your website and see what you're connected to. We don't really want your sort of social enterprise being linked with a lot of Russian porn sites. It's not a thing. It doesn't help you. But it is quite helpful for the people who are running the websites that we don't want to be associated with. Akismet is a piece of software that will actually deal with a lot of the spam up front. It has a paid version. It also has a free tier. So if you're using it just as an individual, you can actually use Akismet to deal with spam on your website without having to pay for it. If you're a commercial business, you will definitely have to pay. But the way to look at it is to think, well, actually for sort of £10 a month or whatever it works out, how much time would I spend deleting those spam comments? Speaking as somebody who is quite prone to doing stuff for free wherever she can, the amount of hours I've probably spent deleting sort of links to porn sites and pharmaceutical links, in the long run, quite often it would have been cheaper to have just paid for the Akismet. I can see Shelley's got a hand up. Go for it.
Hi, Claire. Just another thought on ways of stopping those comments appearing on your website. So when I've used WordPress before, we've just made sure all comments are moderated. So you have the option to approve or not approve anything before it goes on there. So that's a really simple piece of functionality that you can do, isn't it, Claire?
Yeah. Which is currently what I do with all of the ones that I do for free. So the ones where I'm not using Akismet for whatever reason, you can essentially take the comments and you can put them sort of like in a queue. So I've got worthyontheweb.co.uk, and that's a WordPress site. So when I look at that website, and I've had it for a while, when I look at the genuine comments are almost always from people that I actually know in real life, where I've done a blog post, something that I've said has resonated with them, and then they've made a comment. So I can see straight away, it's like, oh, that's my niece, that's my friend, that's my other friend, that's my daughter, that kind of thing. All of the other comments, and I've had that blog for a really long time, all of those other comments have been spam comments. So you can, as Shelley said, you can moderate your comments, but it still means that you've got to go through them. Akismet will do a lot of that work for you. The Hello Dolly plugin that comes with every single WordPress installation is the most baffling plugin that anyone in the world has ever created. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the song Hello Dolly. It was in a musical. It was Louis Armstrong singing about Barbra Streisand. Essentially, it's the song Hello Dolly. What this plugin does is, on your dashboard, it will give you a line from the song Hello Dolly on your dashboard. That is all it does. It does not do anything else. It is the most random thing ever. But from the point of view of having an out-of-the-box website from WordPress, where you can see how things work, the fact that every single website comes with a plugin means that when you go and look at your plugins, you can see that you've got something. It's absolutely pointless. It makes no sense. Nobody really knows why they chose that. But essentially what the Hello Dolly plugin does is it literally gives you just a line from the song Hello Dolly, and it displays it on your dashboard. Now you can see here in front of us, we've got sort of like 2 plugins that are both live, and we can see the word activate and the word delete. If we want to get rid of a plugin, then we can delete it. If we've decided, right, we've got this plugin, until you activate it, it doesn't work. It's not doing its thing until we click the activate button. So you can add a plugin, but until you activate it, it doesn't do anything. It's just sitting there. If you've got plugins or themes that you're not using and that you're not going to use, you need to delete them. Because essentially all you're doing is you're clogging your site up with stuff that you're never going to use. So in the same way that I've got an old settee sat in my dining room. We bought a new settee. We put the old one in the dining room. It's just sitting there taking up space. It's not doing anything. Nobody sits on it because we sit on the new one. It's the same thing. But the other problem you've got is if it's a plugin that you're not using, it's quite tempting to not keep it updated, which then makes it a security hazard as well. So you can see here, just in our dashboard, we can see at a glance what plugins we've got. We can choose to activate them. We can choose to deactivate them if we have one we want to stop using. And it's also where we delete them or where we can add new ones. So our dashboard is the back of our website. It's the bit that the public don't see, only you see it. So until you activate something, it doesn't work. And until you publish something, then it doesn't exist. But you can actually be in the back of your website and you can be sort of working on it and making changes and getting it ready without people actually being able to see what you're doing. Hi, Shelley. Oh, I think you're muted.
That would help, wouldn't it? Thank you. We've got a couple of questions in the chat. Do you want me to feed them in as they come through, or have you got a spot you want to?
Well, let's just see what my next slide is, and then we'll take it from there. So this is the last bit I'm going to show you. So these are our WordPress users. So our users are, you have a username. So for every person who has access to your website, who can log into your dashboard and they can make changes or they can edit things or they can write a new post, you have to add them, which means that general members of the public can't just jump on your website and do things. If you've allowed them to make a comment, they can do that, but they can't make any other changes or do anything else. So every user has to have a username and they have to have an email address associated. So when you set up your own website, by default, you're going to be what we call like the administrator. You're going to be like an admin level user. So you can add new plugins and do other things. But it might be that you have somebody else who might write content for your website, but you don't have to make them an admin. They might be an editor, which means that they can write things and publish things, but they couldn't delete another user, for example, or add an extra plugin. And depending on who else you might give access to, it's important to know that you've got those different levels, because people with unnecessary admin access, it generally doesn't help anyone. It can be a good idea to have an extra admin user if you've got somebody who needs to deal with stuff on your behalf, or it might be that it's good to have an extra person. But just giving everybody admin rights is definitely not the way forward. So, right, Shelley, do you want to give us the questions that have come up?
Sure. So a question from Jill. Where do you find the plugins that are available? How would you search for them?
Okay. So plugins and themes work in similar ways in that you can get them straight from your WordPress website. So when you're logged into your website and you're in your dashboard, you can literally go to plugins and you can go add new, and it will take you to the plugin like repository, where essentially you can choose from thousands of different plugins. You can also do exactly the same for themes. So I will sort of show you that in a second. But essentially, if you get your themes and your plugins through WordPress, then it means that someone somewhere has definitely, at the very least, scanned them for malicious code. If you just Google, find something you like the look of, and then download it, well, a lot of those plugins and themes will be absolutely fine, but some of them won't be. the WordPress repository will have just about everything you are likely to need to get started. But it might be, for example, you might have something where there's a free tier or something that you can get from there. But if you wanted extra functionality, it might be that you have to pay for an extra one. So for example, I have a plugin that I use to take backups of my websites. Now I'm using the free version on some websites, but if I need to use the paid version, then I need to download that from the website that I've paid for it for. So it's not that getting them from anywhere else is automatically a bad thing. It's really not. There are thousands and thousands of reputable developers and places where you can buy software and themes. But if you're starting off with WordPress, I would definitely recommend using the WordPress repo for themes and plugins just to get you started so that you can get familiar with it. And I would be really surprised if you can't find 99.9% of what you need in the repo. So that's a really important question. It's a good thing to think about, because sometimes people have sort of built something. So as a developer, you might have built a plugin or written a theme, but then at the time it might be paid for, but then later on they might offer it for free, but they might offer it for free and then stop updating it, which means if there's a security issue, it's not being dealt with. And quite often when you get free themes, depending on where you get them from, they might be free for a reason. Have we got any more questions?
Yeah, we have. That was really clear. Thank you. A question from Masamet. I'm totally new to WordPress. Do you install WordPress to get to this page? So how would you get from being a complete novice at WordPress to finding that dashboard and starting on your website?
Okay. Well, it depends which version of WordPress you're using. If you're using WordPress.com, then you will start by going to the website WordPress.com, signing up, and then there's no software to download because everything on a WordPress.com website lives on the internet already. So you go to that website and then you'll be able to log into your individual WordPress site and make your changes and then publish them from there. If you're going to use the self-hosted version, if you've already paid for your web hosting, quite often your web host will make this something that you can just add on. I can do you a quick demo for that rather than baffle you with a description. But as a rule of thumb, if you're doing the self-hosted version, most of the time, most of the hosts will have a software installer. So you just kind of say to the host, I'd like a WordPress website, and you pretty much click a button that says WordPress, give it the basic details of what your website's going to be called, what your admin username is going to be, and then it will set up your site using that information. Now, the thing with WordPress is it's what's called a content management system, or a CMS, which means that everything, all of your words, all of your pictures, all of your files are actually stored inside a big database. So if you go to your hosting company and you say, right, I'd like a WordPress website, or if you've set it up in some other way, so essentially what I would normally do is I would take care of all of that, and my clients are just handed their website, and then I teach them how to use the dashboard. If you're setting it up yourself, it's a case of most web hosts will let you set up WordPress without you having to do very much. And then once you've set it up, it will give you a link to your website and a link to your dashboard or your admin panel. So essentially you just visit a different website and then you need to log in. But I will show you that in a few minutes. Now we're on about 11 o'clock. So Shelley, have we got any more questions?
Not at the moment. I'll let you know if we do.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. So if anyone needs to have like a quick leg shake or a quick arm wobble, I'll give you a quick second. And then I'll talk to you about pages and posts, which is one of the things about WordPress that a lot of people find confusing. Okay, is everyone still with us? I'm taking that as a yes. So, WordPress pages and WordPress posts. People find it confusing because they're quite similar. They can be used in quite similar ways, and they look pretty much the same. which is the main reason why people find them confusing, and they are almost used interchangeably, but that's not really how they're designed. Pages on WordPress are designed for what I would call permanent content, things that aren't designed to change, things that will be the same. Whereas our posts are designed for latest news or the current information, or what I've put in brackets there, today's content. So if we imagine that, if we go back to my gardening idea. So if I've created my own WordPress blog, the about me page, that's not going to change. So the fact that I'm still Claire, I'm from Greater Manchester, I quite like gardening, my favourite TV programme is Gardener's World, or whatever I want to say about myself, that's the same. So in 3 months' time, I will still be Claire, in the same way that it might be things like your sort of where you are page. So if it was about your business, you might want to say a little bit about your history, or about where your shop's based, or about how your business came about. Things like the About Us page, that doesn't change. That's a permanent fixture. So if we think about Flourish and use them as an example, even though they might have moved and they might have changed some of the details, you can still edit that content. But Flourish is still an organisation that helps people develop social enterprises. That doesn't change. Posts are really designed for things that are gonna be updated. So if it's things like, this is our event, or this is our training session. So it might be, for example, we might have put a post out that said, right, today we're doing a workshop about WordPress. That's today's news. It might be that after this event, actually, Flourish are going to go and promote their next event. So it might be that they're going to talk about using video instead. So there's always going to be something newer, something that's more up to date. So it might be news, it might be the latest thing. If we use our gardening example, it might be the latest plant that I've bought, or about tips, things you should be doing in your garden in March. And then in April, it would be things you should be doing in your garden in April. So the About Us bit doesn't change, because it's designed for things that never really need to change. Posts are kind of, this is what's happening now. So you would always expect with a post that there is going to be something newer, more up to date, that is going to replace it in the future. So either our new event, my new plant, my latest recipe, whatever it is, the idea is that it's a blog, it's set around blogging. So your blog post is whatever your latest post is. Whereas your page, hi, I'm Claire, I'm a blogger from Greater Manchester, that's the same, I'm still Claire no matter what. And that's the main thing that's different. If you want to use them incorrectly, the WordPress police aren't going to chase you on it. It's not major. But in terms of how they work and how you can organize the things that you put on your website, if you get in the habit of thinking, actually, pages are just for things that don't change, posts are designed for other things, it will generally make your life a little bit easier, because they're designed in a certain way so that you can organize your content in a certain way. Now, categories will allow you to look at the posts that you've made. So not our permanent things, those are our pages, and you can have a sub-page where you might have, this is a page. So if we've got a page about music, it might be that music is the page, and then within that we might have sub-pages for different genres of music. So we might have a page about classical and a page about something else. So you can organize your content with pages, but when it comes to posts, the best way to do that is to use something called categories. So if I was a cookery blogger, or this was a website about cookery or how to cook or something of that nature, we might decide to group our recipes. So we might group them by the type of dish they are. So it might be that we have desserts and we have meat dishes, we have vegetable dishes, we have pasta dishes. So when you look at your recipe, you might say, actually, this is a dessert, so I'm going to put it over there. I'm going to make it, categorize it with all of the other desserts. So that when people like me are sort of finding your website and it's like, actually, I've got a friend coming over who's a vegetarian, I just need vegetarian dishes, then we might go to vegetarian. It depends how you want to organize your content. But if it was for food, you might do it by the type of meal it is. For recipes, as a business, it might be, actually, this is a post about our new event. This is a post about our products. This is a post about news that's happening in our business. So it all depends what your information is. Because the good thing about categories is that you can actually create a page that's made up of things by specific categories. So if you want somebody to go to a page on your website that tells them all of your different events, then you can have sort of like an events page, and on the events page, it will give you all of the different events, because we've used that category to organize that content. You won't suddenly find, oh, we've got an event, we've got another event, we've got a third event, oh, we've got a product launch, we've got something else. It helps you separate things out. So when you've got quite a small website, it's not that big a deal. It's not the end of the world. But sometimes you find that it is a lot easier to do things if you can organise them. Now, I can see that Mel's got a hand up. Go for it, Mel.
Morning, Claire. Thank you. I did say in the chat, I'm not feeling 100%, so I'm struggling to follow a little bit. But how, if I've got my draft website open and I'm looking at the categories page, apparently I've made some categories. How that's good. How do I tell a post or a page that it's applied to a category? Is it that way round, or is it the other way round?
Yeah, well, no, you would usually, you can create categories before you start. So if you know, for example, actually, right, this our website is going to be about art. So if you decided that your categories were going to be pencil drawing, ceramics and screen printing, then you might decide before you start, actually, I'm going to have that as 3 different categories, and you can go off and you can create categories. And then when you make a post, you can allocate it to them. Or when you're actually making a post, you can go off, you can write the post, and at the side of that, you will find that there is a place where you can choose an existing category, or you can add a new one. So if you find, actually, I've created 3 categories, and then you decide, oh, actually, we're going to do digital art and we don't have a category for that, you can actually create it on the fly whilst you're making the post. So WordPress will let you do the same thing in more than one place in almost every instance. It's a little bit confusing that it does that, but it does. But you can do it both ways. You can either create categories, and then when you make the post, you add it to the category. Or if you're making a post and the category doesn't exist, you can just allocate it to it. You can make one there and then.
Thanks. Also, that explains to me, I've only made pages, I haven't made posts. So can you apply a category to your page?
Not really.
No, okay. That you're also touching on a fundamental basic mind block I've got about using WordPress, which is a difference between posts and pages, which I know you've just explained again, and hopefully I'm going to get it. So I won't take up any more time, but you're making things a bit clearer. Thank you.
Because that's the bit that confuses people, because when you log in and you create a new page or you create a new post, they look very similar. They behave in very similar ways. It's really more about what they're intended to do. So being able to sort of separate them a little bit out in your mind, it can make it a little bit easier. But obviously, once you've already started building your website and these things already exist, well, then sometimes it's like, oh, actually, yeah. So it's not the end of the world. You can normally get around it. But when it comes to sort of categorizing things, it's designed for doing with posts.
Thanks.
Now, okay. The next thing I'm going to show you is our media library. Now, I know that I am flying through a lot of things, but I am going to do a demo. So hopefully you'll be able to see all of these things. But I feel that talking about them a little bit before makes all of that make more sense when I show you the demo in a second. Now, the media library is where WordPress stores all of our pictures and any videos and things like PDF files, any types of media, so maybe sound files or whatever it is that you've added, if that's going to live on your website, it will sit in the media library. So it's just a way that WordPress uses, and it organizes everything. And it means that you don't have to add, you add your picture or your video or your sound file, and it will let you do that, and you can kind of store them in there, keeps them all in one place, makes them a lot easier to deal with. Now, WordPress will let you edit images. I wouldn't recommend it. Try and get your image the way you want it before you add it to your media library. They do have tools in there. It's not the end of the world, but it's not the most efficient way, and it's not an ideal way of doing it. Nicola, Shelley, we've got someone in the waiting room as well. Just popping that up there. So our media library is where we store all of our pictures. So we take our pictures or our other media files and we add them to our website. They're not necessarily automatically added to any page on our website. They can sit in our media library and actually not be used. We wouldn't normally do that, but it might be actually, yeah, we're going to add something to the media library and we might use it in the future. This is what our media library looks like. So you can see there that I've added a few different images, and it tells you all of the different types that are in there. Now, because I don't always trust Wi-Fi, I've done a lot of screenshots, which is why I want to get on to doing the demo so you can see what it actually looks like. But essentially, when you go into your media library, you can see a little thumbnail of the picture or the video or whatever it is that you've added, so that if you want to add them, they're here waiting for you whenever you need them. So this is an individual thing, and you can see over here at the right where we've included, like, we've got a little bit of information at the top that tells you about this particular picture. It tells you when it was uploaded, tells you who it was uploaded by, the name of the file, the type of file it is, the size of the file, the actual dimensions or how big it is in pixels. And then underneath that, we have what we call alternative text. Now, alternative text, or alt text as it's commonly known, if for some reason somebody can't actually see the image that you're trying to present to them, the alternative text tells them what it's a picture of. So if you're using a screen reader or you're using any kind of assistive technology, this is what will be read out by the screen reader to people who aren't actually looking at that picture of cartoon me. So the idea of the alternative text is that's what it's there for. I'm just going to tell you that it's not open to discussion, and let's just say that it's compulsory. Technically, you could not do it, but why would you? Adding alternative text, firstly, make sure that everything on your website is available to anyone who might like to use it. Now, one common problem that people have is they say, well, people with visual impairments aren't visiting our website, so we don't have to use alt text. Absolute nonsense. Firstly, you don't know who's visiting your website. Secondly, you're still probably breaking the law by not making your content accessible to people. And thirdly, even if you just wanted to go down the point of view of let's get more people to see your website, Google reads words, it doesn't read pictures. It can, but it doesn't. So things like giving our files names that describe what they are. So for example, this particular file is called slide5.png. That doesn't tell anyone what that's a picture of. A better file name for that would have been Claire Memoji or cartoonclaire.png, something that describes what it is, something that tells Google that actually this is a picture of a woman waving, something that gives them a little bit more information. Now, alternative text is designed for any time when the image either can't be displayed, and it isn't necessarily just for people with visual impairments who might be using screen readers. It might be people who've changed their settings so that pictures don't download. If you're coming up to the end of your month and the amount of data that you've got left, actually, maybe I don't need to download all of these pictures. because in almost every case, the words on your website should be slightly more important. So by making sure that you include alternative text, you make sure that you're making it easier for Google to see what your website's about. You're making it accessible to anybody who's using assistive technology. It's good practice. Why would you not? It takes you literally 2 minutes. Just do it. The title not compulsory. If you want to give a title to that particular file, then you can do. If you want to have a caption that might display below the picture, you can add that here. And also, if you want to do a description, so an alternative text would be, this is a dog or it's a sunflower. It tells them what it's a picture of, but it's short, just tells them this is what it is. The description might be giving more detail about what it's a picture of. So the alt text might be sunflower, whereas the description might be a sunflower in full bloom with a blue background, with hills in the background. The description is giving somebody a lot more information. That might be a full couple of sentences if you feel that that's useful. Whereas the alt text is just, this is a dog, this is a sunflower, this is whatever it is. So if for whatever reason somebody can't see that picture, alternative text tells them what it's a picture of. Now, below the description, we have the file URL. So essentially, every single image that you add or every media file that you've added to your WordPress site has its own unique link, which essentially is how WordPress finds the files that it needs. So if we were writing this in HTML and I've written, here is an image, I would tell the web browser exactly where that picture can be found. You have to include that so that it can't display the picture if you don't tell it where it is. And this works in the same way. We tell it exactly where on our WordPress site this particular picture lives. If for some reason you need to get a copy of that URL, we've got a little copy the button underneath. That's quite handy for certain things where you might need to be able to say, actually, this is the link that goes directly to there. But as a bog standard, you upload a picture, you give it some alternative text, you add it to your media library. That's the very, very straightforward thing. So I'm going to show you how to publish a post. So we're going to go on to our actual website. But before I do, has anybody got any questions? Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to take you onto the actual page that I built yesterday, the actual website. So if you think of any questions, feel free to
I was just going to check, Claire, what time do you think people might get a little bit of a stretch and a break to make a brew?
Actually, now's quite a good time.
That'd be a good time. I'm just thinking, I know I'm ready for one. So I'm just being...
Yeah, well, shall we have a break now until 5:30?
Yeah, if that works for you, and then you can get set up for the next bit and people can have a breather and come back armed with any questions.
Yep. Okay, right, so
Great, lovely, lovely. I'll press pause on the record and we'll see everybody back in 10 minutes.
Cool. See you in a minute.
Back from the break, so I'll hand you back to Claire to carry on with the second part presentations.
Okay, so welcome back, everyone. So I'm going to, for this bit, I'm going to do some demonstrations of some of the things that I've talked about. Hearing about things and actually seeing them or getting to do them makes a bit of a difference. So I'm going to share our demo site that I mentioned earlier. So hopefully you can all see that. Let me just make that slightly smaller. Right. So this is what our demo website looks like. So I built this yesterday. So this is using the latest, the most up-to-date version of WordPress. Keeping your WordPress website up to date is the best way to keep it safe. So over here, you can see we've got our web address. So villagewebsitecompany.co.uk. I own that web domain. And then I've added this whole website into like a directory or a part of it called Flourish so that it's easy for me to find for today. But when it comes to actually owning the web domain, so when we were saying about our website triangle, we need to have the actual address for people to visit. We need to have the files that make up our website, and we need to have them hosted. So this is the self-hosted version of WordPress. That's my web domain. All the files and folders have made up this particular installation of WordPress. So with this one, you can see that you can click and you can go and look at the sample page that comes out of the box. Now, WordPress likes to help you get set up, so it provides some of this dummy content. As a rule of thumb, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go and replace it with something else. You're going to write your own real content. So this is an example page. It gives you examples of how you might want to use it. And then if you want to go back to the home page, we're back where we were. Now this bit here where it says hello world, this is actually a post. So we've had our sample page of our permanent content of the, so that could be our about us page or some other content that stays there all the time. The hello world is our latest post. Now by default, remembering that WordPress was built for bloggers, by default, what WordPress will do is it will show you your most recent post. And then below that, it will show you like the one before that. So if we create a new post, what will happen is it will appear above this one. So I'm now going to log in and show you how we do that so that you can see kind of how it works and what we would do. So that's our website that anyone can see. Oh, Melanie's got a question. Go, Mel.
Thanks. When you say, I understand that posts are the most recent content and it will appear at the top.
Yeah.
Right. Do you mean
by default,
at the top of your do you mean at the top of your homepage? Like at the top of what?
Okay. Unless you, by default, out of the box, it will show your most recent blog post on your homepage. So that's
Right.
what it does by default, but you can change it. So if you wanted to create a specific page of content that you wanted people to see instead of a blog post, so it might be a general intro page that you want everyone to see instead, you can select that, but I'll show you how you do that in a sec.
Thank you.
Okay. So this is our public page. So villagewebsitecompany.co.uk/flourish. If we want to log into it, we get to a slightly different page. Now, essentially, although we've got all of this gibberish in the middle, what you actually do is you type in your web domain. So that's where our web domain ends. And then on the end of that, you do a / and then write WP-admin. And that will take you to your login page. When you type that in, essentially WordPress does all of this gibberish here by itself. So it will redirect you to this page. But if you want to get to if you've got a WordPress website and you want to get to your dashboard, then get to the end of what your web address is, go to the end, and then just type WP-admin, and then press enter, and it will do all of that by itself and take you to the login page. Don't worry too much about remembering that. I can always add that in with the slides so that you've got that as a reminder. Now you can log into a WordPress website using either a username or an email address. So when you first set up your WordPress site, you will specify all of this. So when it gets set up, it was set up with at least one admin user. Once you've got your website, you can then add new users directly from your WordPress site yourself. So if you've gone on to your hosting company, or if somebody else has built the site for you, they will need to create an initial user. But once you've got one, then you can go in and you'll be able to add extra people yourself. Now, this is a fairly standard WordPress login page. There are ways that developers can make them look different so that it isn't quite as obvious that it's WordPress, But out of the box, this is what your login page is going to look like. So to log in, we can use either the username that's been allocated or the email address that's associated with this particular user account. And we give it a password. And you'll see here, we've got the little eyeball. At the moment, we can't see what that password is. If we click that, we can see what the password is. So if you're not sure if you've typed it right, if you press the eyeball, you can see, and it will help you. If you want your particular web browser to remember your login details, you can check the Remember Me, and it will store those details to make it easier for you to log back in next time. All of this is, again, let's say it's fairly standard. The one thing that I would say, never, ever, 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 ever use admin as your username. Technically, it isn't that insecure, but in real life, it is, because the way to get into your website is by using either your username or your email address and your password. They need both bits of information. Every website I have ever built in all the time I've been using WordPress has had at least one attempt to log in using admin as the username. So technically, if you've got a really strong password, it's not the end of the world. And sometimes I know that some hosting companies will by default use admin as the, and if that's what it's already called, then it's absolutely fine. There's nothing you can do with it. But if you're setting it up from scratch and you get a choice, do not use admin as your username. Auntie Claire's pro tip for the day. So we've got our username or our email address. We've got a password, and then you can just click login. If you've got to this page by accident and actually you weren't trying to log in, if you click the link underneath, that will take you back to the home page. But we're just going to log in. Oh, typical. So it tries to make me look bad. Right, give me 1 second.
So many things get glitchy when you're trying to do them on Zoom, don't they?
Oh, they do. Hate it.
Mm.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, back to sharing my screen. Okay. Can you all see that again?
Not. Oh yeah, it's come up now. Thanks, Claire.
Yeah, usually it has a little box around it, and currently it doesn't, so it makes me suspicious. So this is what the dashboard of our website looks like. Because I've got more than one website hosted on the Village website company, Chrome thinks it's helping by making suggestions of passwords, but actually trying to use the password for a completely different site. Okay, so this is our dashboard. So I'm just going to give you the quick tour. So here at the top, we can see this is our web address, and we've got WP admin, which means that this is where our dashboard is. So this top bar across the top, this lets you know that actually I'm logged in. I'm in the right place. I'm logged into my WordPress site. Over here, it tells you which one of us is logged in. So it has the username and also the name of the person. And if you want you're logged in, if you want to change your profile, this is where you would go to make changes. So I can edit my profile. So if I wanted to make it look different, I can change the color scheme. So sometimes you might do that because actually the really dark thing doesn't suit me. I'd rather have a light background. For some people, it's like, oh, actually, I really like purple. It's my favorite color, or I really like red. For people like me, where maybe you've built a lot of WordPress sites, and it might be that one's the real website and one's the staging website. If you're at that point where you're messing with two websites that actually look very, very similar, being able to see at a glance, actually, this is the real website, or this is the staging site, it can help you avoid a lot of hoo-ha. But I'm going to put it back to the default one so that it looks the same as it will do if you try it. But we're in editing our profile, but if you want to change the color, you can do. That's our username. Now, once you have allocated a username, you can't change it. You can change everything else, but you can't change the username. So if you get into your website and your username is admin, the only way to get out of that would be to either create a new username or just live with the one that you've got. But try and be reasonably sure that you pick one that you're going to like. One of my worst habits is I went through a phase of being super duper secure and trying to use really good, really strong usernames that weren't easy for people to guess. And essentially I made it that complicated that I couldn't remember them, which is fine. It's not the end of the world because you can save some of those details. But because I use so many different WordPress sites, a lot of which live on the same web domain, yeah, it's almost impossible to work out which one was which one. So every now and again, you think you're being clever and you're a bit too clever for yourself. So here we've got the option to add our name. So I'm going to add my first name and then I'm going to put my last name. So here we've got a nickname. So that's how you might want to be referred to. So I've put Claire Village Web Co. I can add a new one. I can put, maybe if this was Flourish's website, I might be the Flourish's website team. Okay, come back. So you can just make changes, you can just update it. Okay, and then here where it says display name publicly, so any posts or anything that are made by this particular user, I've got a choice of all of these different options. So every nickname I've ever used, I can use my username, I can just use my name. So I can be Claire, I can be Worthington, I can be Claire Worthington, I can be Worthington Claire, or I can be any of the nicknames that I've allocated. So you can choose which option suits you best. If you were doing some work on behalf of somebody else, you might just want to call it the organization's admin team, or you might put your own name or whatever works best for the type of site that you're using. We have an email address, and the email address is the email address that is associated with anything to do with the website. So if you want to change your username, that's where it comes from. So each website will have a specific admin email address. So if there's only one user, it might be that it's their email address, or it might be that you have one that goes to the person who fixes it when it's broke or who looks after the alerts. And then the individual users might have their own email addresses. You can add a website. So for me as a developer, I might add the website address, or I might want to make that Village Web Company so that people can find me easier. There's a little bit of info there where I can add a bio about myself if that's what you want to do. Because bearing in mind, again, this was created for bloggers. So if you were doing a guest blog on somebody else's behalf, actually having a little bit of a bio that says this is Claire, Claire's a web developer from Greater Manchester, it helps to give a little bit of context if I was writing a guest blog on a website for somebody who isn't familiar with me, but might be with them. So you can add that little bit of info. Now here you'll see we have the option to add a profile picture. Now, the way that WordPress works is that if you want to change your profile picture, you do that through an external service called Gravatar. So when you go to Gravatar, you can choose what picture and you can upload it. And that profile picture is associated with the email address. So Alerts doesn't have a profile picture associated with it. If I'd have used claire@worthyontheweb.co.uk, it would have done. If I'd used claire@villagewebcompany.co.uk, it does. But alerts@villagewebcompany.co.uk doesn't have a profile picture associated with it on Gravatar. So rather than going into your own website and changing your picture, if you want your profile picture to be changed, you need to do that through Gravatar. I'm not going to elaborate on that for now. Just know that don't fight in here trying to upload a picture. It will not work. If you log in and you want to change your password, maybe you've thought of a better one, or maybe you think somebody else might know it, or you were allocated a really complicated one and you just want to make it something that's still robust and still secure, but not this particular one, you can set a new password. And also, if you've logged into your website in different places, so maybe on your laptop, but it's logged in on your work one, or you might be logged in on your phone, you can set a new password and log out of everywhere else. That's quite useful if you use a shared computer. So maybe you've been at the library, or if you're at uni or at college and you've used like one at wherever it is that you've been, where you're sharing a computer, or maybe you borrowed a friend's and then you think, actually, I don't remember logging out. You can actually log in on your own machine and then you can log out everywhere else. So it's like an extra security feature. I'm not going to get involved in application passwords. I feel that we don't need that today. So we've made a couple of changes. I'm going to update that profile and then it will take us back to where we were. So you can see for this particular website, I've added 2 users. They're obviously both me. I'm a bit of a sado. I do add myself in various times. So this is the one we're logged in as, which is alerts. And with this one, you can see that one's already got a profile picture, and it's got a profile picture because that email address is already registered on Gravatar with that particular picture. So if you've got a friend or a colleague who works on the website with you and they need to get another copy of their website, a new password for the website, sorry, you can actually log in and you can send them a link to reset their password. So you can do all of that from within the website. So I'm going to go back to the dashboard. So this bit over here where it says howdy, if you've set the language of WordPress to something in specific, then it will, by default, it thinks we're in America and it will default back to being howdy because WordPress thinks that's how Americans say hello. I'm guessing some of them do, maybe some of them don't. If we set the language as being English UK, that will change to hi. So tiny little thing, but it's one of those little things that they do. And also, if you delete something, if your site is set up as being English, Great Britain, then it will say that your rubbish is going to the bin. You can bin things. If you're set up as being American, it will say, well, you can send it to trash. Tiny little things like that, just to make it fit better. Now, WordPress is available in, it's definitely dozens of languages. There's a lot of different languages. So if you are, for example, if your social enterprise works with people whose sort of native language isn't English, they could set up a WordPress website and they can set it up in a language that's more comfortable for them. So when I teach in Sheffield, most of our students are actually from China. So when we have to tell them not to because we don't read Chinese and I'm there to help them with the websites. But essentially they can go into their WordPress site, they can change the default language so that all of this, instead of being in English, will all be in Chinese. WordPress will let you do that because it is a global thing. So depending on who's using it, what they're using it for, you can customize things and you can make it fit you. So like I say, if you've got people who, like say, if their English isn't their first language, actually, if they'd like it to be in another language, WordPress will totally facilitate that. Now, this part of the dashboard here is the part where it gives you lots of little bits of info. And this bit might change depending on which plugins you have and who set up your website, because it's an area that can be edited. So this top bit here, this is very standard. So as I said before, this bit here where we've got the WordPress logo, this is where you can find out information about WordPress, about the software behind the website. Wordpress.org is the organization who looks after the community of people in WordPress. So they run things like WordCamps. So I was sort of like lead organizer for WordCamp Manchester a few years ago for a couple of years. So you can't just randomly just set up a conference and say, oh, I'm just going to do a WordPress conference. if you're going to do a WordCamp, Wordpress.org are the organisation who will help you and make sure that it's a really good event. They give support to the people who are running them and make sure that everything reflects the wider WordPress community. There's also documentation about the software. And if you've got any support or you want to give any feedback, all of that lives under the WordPress logo. So that's about WordPress, not about your site. The next one along where we've got our little house and the name of our website. So I've called this Build Your Own Website because that's what our session's called today. If I want to look at my website, if I just hover over there, click Visit Site, we can see our website. It looks the same, but notice we've still got the black bar across the top so that we can see that we're logged in. This bit here where we've got the little dashboard. So if we hover instead of the house, we get the dashboard. And then when we click dashboard, it takes us back. So essentially, you can flip backwards and forwards between what your website looks like and the part of the website where we can actually make changes. So this is our dashboard. This is where we do things. We have the next bit over here, which is our speech bubble. That is where you will see comments. So if you have allowed people to leave comments like at all, this is where they will be. So when you go into comments, we can see that WordPress has given us a single comment, it just comes with the website so that everyone can see where they go and what they would look like. So if you want to make a change to this or you want to do something with it, then this is where you would do that. You would do that in your comment section. So the comment is, hi, this is a comment. To get started deleting comments, you can go to the comment screen and it also tells you where the avatars come from. So WordPress.org have got this little creature here, he's called a Wapoo. So essentially what they've done is they've registered that as being their profile picture for that particular email address. So at the moment, this is a live comment. It has been approved. If we think actually we don't want to approve that comment, we can unapprove it. Or if you've accidentally approved a spam comment, we can do that. We can reply to comments in here. We can edit a comment. If we decide this is a spam comment, and let's say a lot of WordPress does attract a lot of spam comments, you can make it a spam one by marking it as spam, which also helps to feed into the system that actually this particular post or this particular account or this particular IP address has a habit of sending spam comments. But if we just want to delete it and get rid of it, then we can press the trash and it will put itself in the bin. Over here, you can see which post the comment was made in response to. So it was made in response to the dummy post that came called Hello World. And if you want to see that post, you can click to it. And this little number here tells us how many comments we have on that particular post. So because it hasn't been approved at the moment, it's saying that there's none, but we've got a 1, like in a little red circle, which is a notification to say you've got 1 comment. And if we look here at the top, we can see all of our comments. So there's only 1. None of them are from me. We have 1 comment pending, which is this one. We have no comments that have been approved. Nothing's in spam and nothing's in the trash. Nothing's in the bin. So if we approve that, we can see that changes. So we have none pending. We have 1 that's approved. So in my case, when it's a website or it's a comment on my website that's from someone that knows me and it's a genuine comment, then you will see that. So over here where we've got the plus sign, this is how we can add different things to our website. So we can add a new post, we can add media to our media library, we can add a new page, or we can add a new user. And we can do all of this just without even leaving the top bar. Now, depending on what plugins you add to your website, you might find that extra things appear here or that extra things appear down this side. When you add a plugin, you're adding essentially a bundle of code that adds some extra functionality. And sometimes as part of that functionality, it might need you to change the settings. And to do that, it will add some extra content. So if you look at this one, this is a bog standard out of the box with no changes. So if I show you a different website, you'll be able to see how it's slightly different. So this is another one of my sort of demo websites that I use. Essentially, it's a blog where I whinge about my hair. That's probably the quickest way of describing it. It's taken a while to load in, but you can see that some things are the same. So this top bar is the same, but I have an extra thing there because I have a plugin that counts how many visitors. We have another one there, which is a plugin that I use for backing up. I have a message from that particular plugin. So you can see that it looks a bit different. And down this side, we have a lot more options, a lot more menus, because they're all tied into the different plugins that are associated with this particular website. But the basics are all the same. If I want to look at my site, I go to visit site by going to where the little house is, and this will take me to my website so that I can see what it looks like. And because this is a standard blog, that is the most recent blog post that I published on this website. So it tells you it's by Claire Worthington. It gives you the option to leave a comment, and it gives you the first bit of the blog. And if I want to read more, I click read more, and then it will take me to the full post. Below that one is the blog post I posted before that, when I was clearly adding some purple hair extensions. The one below that was a general experimentation one, but the idea is that they work backwards. So your most recent blog post will be the thing that comes up first. And that by default is what WordPress will do. Let me get rid of that. Don't need that open. So you can see that this one here, it's a lot less busy. There's a lot less things on it because it doesn't have the same number of plugins, because it doesn't have as many things on there. So if you've already got a WordPress site that someone's built for you, if you have different options, don't panic. It's not a big deal. It just means that they will have come in response to something else. Now, one of the things that you'll have seen here, see here, we've got this number 3 and we've got this little loop. That is WordPress telling me that this particular website has 3 outstanding updates that it wants you to run. So if I go to my dashboard from the website, I can see here that I can go to updates there, or I can go to updates up here. And it will tell me exactly what needs to be updated. So it's telling me you have got 3 plugins that need to be updated. All of my themes are up to date, and all of the various translations are also up to date. I say you can use WordPress anywhere in the world, and you can change the language of it. So a lot of the time they will come with different translations, which means that your version will always have the most up-to-date one. So I'm just going to stick to our normal one. I just wanted to show you a different site so that you can see that it might look a little bit different depending on what you've got on your website. So is everyone still okay? Has anyone got any questions before I move on to the next bit?
We did have some questions, Claire. So in terms of one about search engine optimization, and then one about just explaining about the difference between a domain and how you go about setting that up. So is the website the domain name that you've bought? So I don't know if you want to touch on those now or at the end.
Okay, we'll probably do them at the end, but I'll make a note. So SEO domains. Okay.
And everyone, do keep popping things in the chat as they come up, and then we'll come back to them all.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Shelley will keep telling me when we've got some. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to add a new post. So here in this big grey bit, like I say, this looks very different. So this is running the latest version of WordPress. We can get a little bit more information about this version. Now, the last big update that WordPress made was a really big change from how it had been before, which was that every time they do an update, there are changes and things are different. The last time it was like a massive change. So I feel like a few more people will have bothered reading it this time. When they make tiny changes, people just kind of let it go. So if we wanted to get some information about the newest version of WordPress, we have links to get to that. I'm going to dismiss that because we don't really need it. These boxes here gives you different ways of finding out bits of information about WordPress, and a lot of it is done automatically. So we have this one here, the site health status. It runs little checks of things where it thinks, oh, you might want to keep an eye on that. So it might be things like not keeping things up to date, or it might be the type of software that your hosting company is running might not be the most up to date. All of those things will sometimes appear in this bit. It's just a way of alerting you to the fact that there might be a problem. It hasn't always been there, but it's been there for a while now. This at a glance section tells you at a glance about your website. So it tells us that we have one post, which is our sample post, our hello world. We have one page, which is our sample page that came with the site. We have one comment, and we are running WordPress 5.9.2. And we are using the 2022 theme. So in the dashboard, we can see at a glance how many pages we've got, how many blog posts are on there, how many comments there are, and which theme I'm using. So sometimes when people, if I say to them, if they're having a problem, I ask them what theme they're running. If they don't know, we can just go to the dashboard and it will tell us the name of the theme that you're running. The activity thing underneath, that just tells you roughly what's happened on your website. So it tells you what happened most recently. So it tells you that at midnight, there was a hello world post, which is kind of probably around the time when I sent the website live. Any recent comments tells you what time comments were made. So we can see again that what's approved, what's pending, how many comments, how many are in the bin. It's the same info that we were able to see before, but this just roughly tells you what's happened with our page, with our website, sorry, not page. This bit over here, this is about WordPress itself. Now, as I said before, WordPress has like a whole community behind it. And there are a lot of regular monthly meetups. There are also WordPress conferences called WordCamps. So if there is an event taking place near you, it will try and give you some information in this bit here. So if you live in or around Leeds and you want to go to a monthly meetup about WordPress, then if you can click this link, it will give you all the details about WordPress Leeds. Manchester have had a monthly WordPress meetup. It's not running at the moment, but they have the Manchester WordPress user group. So the idea is that this will tell you about events that are happening locally. If WordPress London is happening this year, it will tell you that there's an event, it will tell you when it is, and you can click the link to get details and buy yourself a ticket. Now, WordPress meetups are generally, and I think always free. WordCamps are always very reasonably priced. So when we were holding WordCamp Manchester in 2015 and 16, and I think we did one in 17 as well, the ticket price was like £30. So compared to most tech meetups and most tech conferences, very, very sort of reasonable prices. WordPress.org, the community, keeps it at that price because they want to make it accessible to the biggest number of people. Once you start holding conferences that are £1,000 to attend, you instantly exclude a lot of people. And that's nothing against conferences that charge that much. Sometimes that's just how much it is. But when it comes to WordPress, WordPress is about open source, it's about community, it's about letting people publish on the internet. That they're really, really keen to make it available to as many people as possible. These links underneath, these are all information about news to do with WordPress. So at the moment, we're running WordPress 5.9.2. Before that, we were running WordPress 5.9.1. They found there was some kind of an issue. They released an update. We've updated it. This is a little bit of information about that update, about why you need to do it. Also, you have the website WP Tavern, which is an ongoing blog that talks about things to do with WordPress. the idea of the tavern being like a pub, we all talk about WordPress in our virtual pub. Yeah, enough said. Now, the one thing that's quite interesting, and the one thing that I think you're more likely to use, is this over here, which is a quick draft. Now, if you've got an idea for a blog post, but you're not ready to publish it, you can jot your ideas down in the quick draft and it will store that for you for later. So if we're thinking, actually, I'm going to do a post, I'm going to do one about web domains because a lot of people have asked questions. So web domains. And then for me, quite often, it might just be just a few ideas about what it is, or it might be actually you can get in here and write a whole paragraph. But the idea of the quick draft is you can, without even leaving the dashboard, you can give it a title. You can start with some content. So some information for people register in their first web domain. So you can see there, if you make a typo, it will do the same as Microsoft Word does and give you the little line underneath. So you can edit it. So that's my idea. I've not written it yet. It's not ready to go live, but I've had an idea. I'm going to do this post. I'm just going to save that as a draft. And you can see underneath, it's now added that to my recent drafts. It tells us today's date and a little bit of info about what it was. It means that the next time I log into this website, I've got that draft sitting there waiting for me. So I'm showing you that now, so that in a minute, you'll see it pop back up. Okay. So we're going to add a new post to our website. So we're going to use the plus sign. So we're going to add a new post. And it's going to go off and it's going to create our next post for us. So this is what it looks like when you come to add a new post to a WordPress website, assuming that you're using one that's using the default theme at the moment. So we're going to call this the Flourish demo post. So you'll see we have this bit here, which takes us back to our dashboard. So we've got our WordPress logo. We've got some extra stuff here where you can add extra things and where you can toggle and make some changes. We have our title that we've just created. And then here it gives us the option to type or to choose a block. Over here, we have the option to save our draft. We can preview what we're doing at the moment. We can press the blue publish button. And then we have a settings cog where we can make some changes. When you create a new post or a page in WordPress, until you press the big blue button, nobody else can see it. So until we click publish, I can write whatever gobbledygook I like. Now you'll see here, we have lots of different options, which I'm going to come to in a minute when we've actually added the post. So by default, it just says type or choose the block. So this is a paragraph. Again, spelt wrong because for some reason I never spell paragraph right. But you can see that it's given us the little line, so I can see straight away that I've got an extra row and I don't know why it's there, but it happens a lot. Still spelt wrong because it's like, right, well, that shouldn't be there. Why is that G there? Let's go back. So this is a paragraph. This is just written text. So that's a whole paragraph. And you can see when you hover over it, it brings that up. So it says, actually, this is a paragraph. That's the little icon that tells us it's a paragraph. I can change whether it's aligned to the left. I can make it centered. I can line it to the right. I can make that text bold. I can put it in italics. I can insert a link, so a hyperlink that will take it to another web page. I can find more tools, but as a rule of thumb, if you type, that's what it'll do. If I think, actually, I want to change this to a heading, I can do that and I can make a change to something I've already created. But let's leave it as a paragraph for now. So you can see by default, again, if I type, it will assume that I want it to be a paragraph. If you hover, we see this little square over here. So we've got a little black square with a white cross in it. If you hover over it, it will go blue and it will show you the words add block. So we're going to click that and it gives us the option to add an extra block of content. Now, the idea of using blocks in WordPress is fairly new-ish. In the old days, it didn't used to do this. You used to have to use an assortment of plugins or had to write your own code to be able to do this. Now you can go onto WordPress and you can say, actually, I'm going to add a picture, or I'm going to add a heading, or I'm going to add a list. So I'm going to add a heading. This is a heading. And when I press enter, again, by default, it assumes that I'm going to want to write a paragraph, or I can go over here and add a block. So I can say, right, now I'm going to add an image. So I press the plus, choose image, and then it gives me a choice of where this image is going to come from. I can either upload, so I can add a new image file to our WordPress website, or I can go to our media library and choose one of the pictures that's already sitting on our WordPress website. Or where it says insert from a URL, if you've ever used something like Unsplash, and sometimes you can, or if you've got like demo posts that you get from other places, demo pictures, instead of actually hosting the picture, you can just include a link to it and it will still display without the actual file sitting on your website. For ease, we're just going to go to the media library. So straight away, it's given me the option to upload new files. So I can go, I can select a file and I can go and choose a file off my computer. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to the media library and choose one of the pictures that we've already got on our website. So we're going to pick Cartoon Claire. And then at the bottom, where it says select. So that's the one we've picked. I could pick this one. I could pick that one. Essentially, you just pick whichever one suits you. So now you can see it's inserted a picture. Now, when I added that image to our media library earlier on, I added a caption of Cartoon Claire. So that's now displaying below the picture. So we can see now that we have the page title, we have a paragraph, then we've got a heading, then we've got a picture. So actually, it doesn't make sense to have a paragraph and the heading the other way around. So if I go to my heading and I click it, you can see that the picture for a heading is different to the picture from a paragraph. So it's a little icon that tells us this is a heading. Here we can alter what kind of heading. So when you're writing code for a website, if it's the main title page, that's going to be a H1 header. If it's a subheader, then it would be a H2 or a level 2 heading. And essentially headings go from level 1 down to 6. We're not going to get too involved in that, but in the same way as paragraphs, we can align to the left, center it to the right. We can make it bold. We can include a link. What we're going to do for this one is we're going to move it up. So this particular block is going to piggyback. So it is now one higher than it was before. So now when we look at it, we have this is a heading and this is a paragraph. And you can move them up and down. If I decide, actually, I'm going to put the picture there and put the paragraph below, you can move them up and down. And it is literally that easy. If we want to add anything else, it assumes that we're going to want to type. So it will always say type or choose block. So when we go to add block, these are the 6 that it thinks we might want to use. So they're usually ones that we've either used recently or ones that are very common or very popular, but they aren't the only ones. If you go underneath where we have browse all, it gives us all of these different choices of different types of blocks that we might want to add. So you can see that there's lots and lots of different ones. So if I wanted to embed a YouTube video, then I can choose to add YouTube. And then you go to YouTube, you copy the link, and you literally just paste it in there. And then you click embed, and it will just display that little box so that people can actually look at a YouTube video without having to leave your website. So you can see here where it says embeds, we have a choice of different ones. So you could include a SoundCloud, you could include a Vimeo video. Wherever you've got external content, these are the ones that just come out of the box. So there are other options that you can use, but just as it comes out of the box with no changes, if you've got a YouTube video that you want to embed and you want to include a link to that so people can be on your website, but actually watch a YouTube video, you literally just copy and paste it into that. And then when you've added it, you add the link, you click embed, and then we would have a video in there. So let's see if we can find a YouTube video. Okay, so this is a YouTube video that I've looked at recently. I'm not even going to go through all of the ads. But if I want to share this, I click share, copy that link, go back to our website, paste that link in, click the embed button. And you can see that it's added that video. And it's added it straight to our website. We haven't had to upload the video. It exists on YouTube already. I just copy that link, put it on there, and now it's here on our website. And the idea of blocks is that you can very easily insert chunks of content. That's what it's designed to do, so that it's really easy for you to be able to say, right, I want to put a picture here. I want to put a paragraph there. I want another heading. I want to move things about, and you can just move them up and down. You can add new things, you can change them. That is how blocks work. So we've not quite finished with this yet, but I need to go and do something else. I can go and I can save that as a draft. It's still on your website. All of my work has been saved, but if somebody visits this website, they won't see that. So if we go back to our dashboard, we get rid of that YouTube video because they take a while. Okay, so in our posts now, you can see
while you're talking about going back to the dashboard, Claire, there's a question here about I'm not finding a dashboard, where to get it. So it should be at the top left, shouldn't it, in the menu?
It depends which, are you in the, it depends whereabouts on your website you are and which version of WordPress you're using and what theme you're using, wildly enough. They can be all of these different things. But if you're logged in, if you've got the little picture of the house, or if you're actually on your website, if you're visiting your site, so you can see your website, but you've got the black bar across the top to show that you're logged in. If you've got this little picture here where it has the name, then you should be able to get back to your dashboard there. If you don't have the black line, it means you might not be logged in.
So you need to have set up an account and logged in, and then the dashboard should be there.
Yeah, it should be if you're already in.
Does that answer your question? I don't know if you want to come off your mic or let us know if that's helped you find it, or drop something in the chat and we'll carry on. Oh, well, that's helped. Brilliant. Thank you. Great. Thanks, Claire. Keep going.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So we've gone back to our dashboard now. So if we go and look at posts, if we hover over the word posts here, we have a choice to look at all of our posts. So we have the Hello World one that's been published and that exists and that we can see on our website. We have the web domains, which is the one that I did in quick draft. And then we have the one that I've just made, which is our Flourish demo post. So from here, we can go and we can have a look at them. If I know, for example, oh, actually, I definitely need to do some more editing with this. We have the choice between an edit and a quick edit. Quick edit is mostly things like I've published it, I want to unpublish it. So you've got kind of quite quick options. So at the moment, its status is draft. It will allow comments, and you can see the date that it was published. You can go in and you can tweak those things. If you actually want to make a serious change to what's in there, then you need to go to edit for that. And edit will bring us back to that page where we can carry on making changes and doing different things. But you can see that they haven't been published, they're not visible on our website. So if we go back and look at the site, we've got 3 posts, but we've still only got 1 because only 1 site has been published on our website. The other 2 are still sitting there in draft, and the only people who can see them are people who are able to log into your website and make those changes. Now, if you've started a blog post and somebody else needs to finish it, other people on your website would be able to edit existing draft posts. You would be able to edit each other's work unless you've done something specific to stop that happening. But in day-to-day life, if there's 2 of you looking after a website, one of you might write some posts, another one might write some posts. You might be writing about different things. As long as you keep them in draft, they won't be published. Nobody except you will be able to see them. So I'm going to go back to our draft posts. So you can see here our recent drafts. We've got our Flourish demo one and our web domains one. It's now gone up to 2 because there are 2 of them. And you can either go straight to it from here and go back and edit it. You can get to it from posts, or you can just browse around your website. But essentially you will find at least 2 ways of doing just about everything in WordPress. So if we go back to our add new, if we were going to add a new page, we would do that in exactly the same way. So plus, but instead of adding a post, we're going to add a page. And you can see that it looks very, very similar to adding a new post. So it's really no surprise that it gets confusing for people because you can use them in the same way. It's not very, very obvious, but you can see how the 2 are very similar to each other. I'm going to go back to there. Okay. So I'm going to mess with our existing post because I'm conscious that we're getting towards 12:30, so I want to try and speed up a little tiny bit. I can still be around for a little bit longer if people can stay on, but I know sometimes people need to go at the advertised time. So if I go and I make some more changes to my Flourish demo post, I've decided I've written everything, I've done my embedding, I'm going to add another block and I'm going to add a list. So here is a list item. Here is another list item. It is actually the law that if you type with an audience that you do typos, it's just a thing. This is the 3rd. So you can see that that will give you like a bulleted list. But if we decided, oh, actually, I'd rather have that as a numbered list, I can convert that to a numbered list instead. I might think, oh, actually, I want that to be above the other thing. So again, I can move things up and down. I just select the block and I can move them up and down. So when we've decided, right, I'm happy with what I've written, I've got all of the content, I've checked my spelling, I'm ready to go ahead and publish. Before you click the publish button, there are a couple of extra things that you want to have a look at. Now, over here on the right, we have post and we have block. So all of these individual things are individual blocks. If we just want to change one block, then you can see here that it gives us little options. And if I'm on that block, the options for block change. I can make the text bigger. I can change whether it's all uppercase or lowercase. I can do a few different things just right here in the block part. If I want to make changes to the whole post, I want to be over here where it says post. So here it gives us a set of different options that we can tweak and change before we click the big blue publish button. So it tells us that the visibility for this post will be public. If we click publish, everybody on the internet will be able to see it. If I click publish, by default, it's going to publish this post immediately. It will go live straight away. What you can do is you can schedule when your posts go live. So if I'm decided, actually, I want to do a weekly blog post, I want them to go out on a Friday, but actually I'm in Sheffield on a Friday, I'm going to write it on Wednesday, but I don't want it to go live until Friday. I can choose to not have it published immediately, and I can schedule what time on Friday I want it to go live. Underneath here where it says stick to the top of the blog. So by default, WordPress will display the most recent post as the top one. If we've got a particular post and we want it to always display that, then that's how we would do that. We might say, actually, I want this post to always be at the top. It's a bit like having, if you use Twitter, where you have your pinned tweet, it's the same kind of thing, where you can just say, actually, I want this particular post to be at the top. And it might be you want that post to be at the top for a month, or it might be it's a post about a particular thing. Sorry, I've got someone who just popped into the shop who's acting the fool. Luckily, I'm related to him, so it's fine. But this bit here where you want to stick it to the top of the blog, even if you write a new post, you will then, this one would stay at the top. Hi, Mel, have you got another question?
Yeah, it's related to this because I was asking about this earlier. So would you recommend then that your sort of about page was a post that you stuck at the top rather than a page? Because that's where I'm struggling, and we might need to talk another time because I'm really tired today. I'm struggling about the structure of how the website presents itself to the world. Does that make sense?
At the moment, not necessarily, because there's another thing that I'm going to show you in a minute. Because you can do, if you've written a page and you want the page to be the thing that people see, then you can tell WordPress that that's what you want it to show. Okay. So I'll show you that in a second.
Thank you.
Yeah. Right. So
can I chip in there as well? So another way of looking at it, Mel. So when you can just have a different page, different tabs across your top navigation or wherever. So one of them could be your home page, which would be permanent content. One of them could be your about page, which would be permanent content. Your blog page could be one of the other pages, and you can just tell, like Claire says, you can just tell WordPress to put all your blog content, and it could be called blog, it could be called news, it could be called events, whatever it is that you want that content to be, but it can be one of the inner pages. It doesn't have to be the front page like the default is.
That's what I want to understand, is how I make those tabs across the top. But we're not there yet, are we?
Don't worry, we'll get to that bit. I'll show you in a bit.
Okay,
don't
thank
worry.
you.
Okay, so this is our post. We've decided we're happy with it. We want it to be public. We want it to publish straight away. We're not going to stick it to the top. This bit here of pending review, do you remember I said how we have different levels of authority? So if you've got somebody who might write a blog post on your behalf, but you have to okay it first. So it might be, actually, I just want to check the content, or I want to make sure you haven't put any typos in there. Or it might be it's a guest post that you just want to give the once over to. If they don't have the authority, if they're added as what we call a contributor, they can still write the post, but then they can't actually publish it. So they can write everything, they can add the pictures, they can have it ready. If it's pending review, then that will be waiting for somebody to say, yes, this can be published. So this bit here where we've got the author, so it knows it's me. So I can either use kind of that nickname, or I can publish it as Claire Worthington, which I think is the other user. So even though I've written it, I might want to write it, but have it published under one of the other website users. This bit here about templates, I'm not going to get into because it's a lot for today, because I know we've covered a lot of info. This permalink here, this is quite important because I know that somebody had some questions about SEO. So by default, WordPress will give your individual posts names that are based on the date. So you can see here that this is the web address of this particular post. So if we wanted to go and visit this post, that's what its website would be. You can actually change that, and you can change this part here. So it's called Flourish Demo Post, because that's what we've called it. It has dashes in between because computers don't understand spaces, definitely not in web addresses. So there has to be something in there. But this little bit here where it's got today's date as part of the actual web address, you can change that and you can make that different. I'm not going to cover it in today's, but just know that that is something that you can do. By default, WordPress used to always give things like post ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or something ridiculous, but you could change it in the settings so that its full title was based on the name of the post. It's now it's got a bit of the date and the name of the post at the end, but you can change that in the settings. So earlier on, we had a question about categories. Now, by default, WordPress will give you one category called uncategorized, which it's not ideal because when people see that word, it looks as though something should have been categorized. But we're right here in the middle of the post, so we can add a new category and we can give it a name. We can call it demo. It's not a subcategory of anything else, but if we wanted it to be, it could be. So if it was a subcategory of our other categories, you can choose it from there. In this instance, we're not going to, we're just going to make it demo. And we're going to add that new category. So you can see that now we've actually got two categories. So we can just uncheck uncategorized, and this will group this particular post only with the other demo post categories. We've got somebody in the waiting room.
There we go.
If we go a little bit further down, you've got this thing here called tags. Again, I'm not going to elaborate, but the best way to describe a tag, it's a little bit like a keyword. So if this was our blog and it was about cookery, it might be we might organize our categories based on what type of meal it was. So we might have desserts, main courses, vegetarian, vegetable dishes, soup dishes. Those might be our categories for all of our recipes. But actually, we might want to add eggs as a tag. So if I've got an extra dozen eggs that are sitting in the fridge that I need to cook today, well, actually, if I'm looking through the different categories, well, it might be a meringue or it might be an omelette. They're not really going to sit together in the category if I've organized them by the type of meal they are. But they both use eggs. So it might be I could add eggs as a tag, and that would be a way of adding a keyword to a particular post. Now here we've got our featured image. And the idea of the featured image is if you share a link to an individual post on our page on something like Facebook, for example, so every now and again you'll add a link to something and it will just put a picture up. This is where it will know what picture to use. So if I want to set the featured image, I just click that, choose a picture, and then click the set featured image button. If I want to replace that image and I think, oh no, actually, I don't want to use that one, I want to use this one, I just change it. So literally replace image, pick the one you want, press the blue button. We have an excerpt here. So when we went to the front page and it gave us the first bit of information, the first couple of paragraphs or the first few words, if we want to write a specific one, rather than just taking a chunk of the page, then you can choose to write that in here. So this is demo, which I know I'm sure I've spelt wrong. Okay. A little bit lower down where it says discussion.
Claire, sorry to interrupt. I'm just conscious we're 10 minutes over time. So
yep.
I
just give me 1 second.
Yeah, no worries. I just wonder if we find a good place to stop and then maybe take a couple of questions before we wrap up.
Yeah, no worries.
Brilliant.
So here where we've got the discussion bit, where we can allow comments. So if we don't want people to be able to leave comments at all, then we can uncheck that. And the pingbacks is so that people from other websites can link to it. So if we go through everything and we decide we're happy with it, we like everything, we're ready to publish, then you click the big blue button and it will do the little reminder by default that says, are you sure you want to do this? When we say that we're sure, we click the blue button And if we want to see what the post looks like, we can go and see it. So there's our featured image. This is the rest of our post. And this is the opportunity to leave a comment. But if we go back now and we look at our main page and we visit the site, we can see that now our newest post is on top and the one we had before is below. Okay. Okay, so has anyone got any questions at this point?
Thanks, Claire. I'm just going back to the chat to see if there are any questions there. We didn't touch on domain names, setting up domain names or SEO, did we?
No. Okay. So the one thing that I did say that I'd show you, if you don't want your blog post to be the first thing that people see when they visit your website, here in appearance, there should be an option to change it, because essentially you can customize which page they get to. So there is a thing where you can change that. Instead of it being that they actually see the blog post first, you can change that in there. In terms of web domains, you can get web domains from lots of different places. Let me just log out of here. So pretty much every single hosting company everywhere will let you buy a web domain from them. So if you go to 123reg, they're quite a big name. If you want to choose a web domain and you're not sure which name you want, essentially they will all have a search bar. So you can go to this search bar and you can see there that they are selling .co.uk domains from 99 pence, but that's only for the first year. The normal price for that is £11.99 plus VAT. So if you're buying a .co.uk domain, have in your head it's probably going to cost you £15 a year. The .com one, where at the moment it's £1.99 for your first year, but again next year it's going to be £15.99 plus VAT. So kind of think in your head probably going to be 20 quid. So there are lots of different ones, but 123reg isn't the only one. You can go to pretty much anyone who does hosting will all sell web domains, but I'm happy to send a list that can go out with the slides after so that people can do things. The idea of finding a web domain is essentially they will have a search bar. So if we put in what we want our website to be called, and then we conduct a search, so you can see it will give me all of the different options for what I've asked for. So I can have claireswebsite.co.uk for £7.50, claireswebsite.uk, claireswebsite.com, claireswebsite.blog. You get the gist. And there's literally dozens. So this one here, it's like £55.95 a year, as opposed to £7.50, which is the standard rate for a .co.uk. So there are lots of different options, but essentially you can buy them in different places. I'm happy to send a link of ones that I've used in the past and that I haven't had any problems with, not because they're the only ones or because they're definitely better, but the ones that I know that I've used and that I haven't had any problems with. What was the SEO question?
It was literally how any advice for how to make sure you get found, any tips for SEO. I know that's an entire other session, obviously, but yeah, any really top line guidance as to what we can put on the website or in the text in order to get found, to get searched for well.
When it comes to, for WordPress in particular, there are things that you can use, like extra plugins like Yoast, that will help you with your search engine optimization.
Yeah, I find that really useful. Do you use that, Claire?
Yeah, I do. Not as much as I should. I've got it installed on a few sites where it's promptly ignored, but it's sitting there doing its thing.
Ready to do it, yeah.
Yeah. But also there are things like Google. If you use Google Analytics, you can use that to look at the performance of your website. So you can actually count how many people are visiting. You can look at where they've come from. You can look at if they were searching, what things they were searching for when they found you. There are a lot of other tools that you can use, but in most cases, search engine optimization comes down to having good content, making your website easier for people to use, but also people like Google search have now started influencing the results on how quickly your site loads. So things like having a massive file size. So if we've got a brilliant photograph, but that photograph is actually the equivalent of a whole month's worth of phone data, well, it's going to take a long time for that website to load. Google's not going to like that, and it is going to discourage people from visiting your website. It will want people to go to something that's faster. So having good quality content kind of goes without saying. Why are they going to visit your website if it's not what they're interested in and it's not useful? If you can make things like the permalinks that I mentioned before about the actual link for the individual pages, that can help. But there's so much. It's more a case of what things not to do rather than what things to do, because Google like to keep their recipe quite secret. But there's definitely a few things we can help with.
We've got another question in the chat if you're ready for that, Claire.
Yeah, I'm going to.
What does it mean to set up DNS for your domain?
Okay, well, the DNS settings, essentially, when I said at the very beginning that the actual address that human beings type in and where the computers send you aren't the same thing. The DNS settings are the thing that control all of that. So when we go to worthybobs.com or flourishtogether.org.uk, that is actually associated to a set of different settings. So I have clients where they have their web domain is held with one company. I host the actual files for their website, and they might have their emails looked after by Google or Microsoft 365. DNS settings are how you control where all of these things go to. It's definitely not a two-minute answer, but essentially DNS settings are how you control all of those things. But yeah, that's it. It's not a 2-minute, so I'm not going to risk baffling you anymore. But essentially you do that with wherever you've got the domain. So if you've registered your domain with 34SP or with Worthy Bob's Hosting or with 123reg, wherever you've registered your web domain, that is where you will control your DNS settings.
And we've got, I can see Jill's got her hand raised, so maybe if we take that as the last question and then wrap it up. I think we could probably keep talking all afternoon, couldn't we?
I was just going to say that, Claire, you were totally right when you said you know how to talk.
Well, that's why I don't normally encourage you to ask questions when she's in the middle. I was like, whoa.
No worries. Just a couple of questions that I asked really. One of them was like, when you're saying about you get your domain name, is there like some way that you set up the email that's linked with that as you're doing it, or is it a separate thing?
It depends, because your website and your emails both need to be hosted.
Yeah.
Somewhere there is, your emails need to live on somebody's computer somewhere.
Yeah.
It's probably the easiest way of putting it. So like say, I have clients where if you buy a web domain from say 123reg or 34SP, anybody who sells web domains,
yeah,
they will usually offer you the option to set up an email account,
right,
or multiple email accounts,
yeah,
and to set up website hosting.
Yeah.
So you can choose, you can put them in separate places. So if you've got like Google Suite, for example, and you want to do all of your emails through Google, well, there's no point in setting up your paying 123reg to set up emails, because actually you want to do them through Google. So for example, if I've got somebody who's setting up their very first website, I will often do them as a package. So you get your web domain and 2 emails and your website, and then I'm actually hosting your emails. But it does mean that if there was the problem with, if your web domain, so your website and your emails are hosted in the same place, there's a problem with that particular computer that's hosting all of those things. If your website goes down, your emails go as well. So a lot of people, they like to separate them, but essentially somebody needs to host them. It doesn't have to be the same person, but somebody somewhere has to, somebody's using up space to store your emails.
Right, that sort of follows on to my other question I asked really, because it was also about the part when you were doing on the dashboard and you added in your email and your username. I don't know, do you set that up yourself, or does that get generated when you do the WordPress? How does that username and email get generated?
Yep. So when you first set up your WordPress site, the very first user will be set up during that process. So if you've got your own hosting, so say for example, you've got you bought hosting from someone and they've got something called cPanel where you can control all of the other things. And that's where you've set up your WordPress. When you say, set me up this WordPress installation, it will give you the option to choose which email address is associated and to choose your username usually.
Right, I see.
So
Okay.
it's when the first one is wherever you set up that WordPress installation, that's the point where you choose what the username is. Once you've got one admin user, well, you can add everybody else on. So if there's 5 of you working on your website, you might be the one who sets it up and you might be the admin, but then you can add the other 4 people. And then you can say to them, right, what email address do you want? What username do you want to have? You can.
So that initial email is done at the point of setting up the WordPress and the hosting.
Yeah, because there has to be an email address and a username for every WordPress user.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid we're going to have to call it a day there, because we're about to start our next session. So if I just take the opportunity to say thank you so much, Claire, from the Village Red Company. That was really, really informative. And yeah, we could have chatted all afternoon. So thank you for your time. That was brilliant.
And the offer's certainly there to run a physical session. So we'll perhaps send an email out as part of the follow-up to just see who might be interested in that. But yeah, brilliant. I'm going to stop recording. Thanks ever so much.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.